This is a compressed version of some training that I've been running for the last 5 years now with teachers and trainers in the UK and quite a few other international jurisdictions as well. So I've tried to put it into 25 minutes for you, but I'm very aware that for a conference like this, you might be suffering from Zoom overload, and that the last thing you want is someone like me reading out slide after slide. So let's just try and keep it a little bit interactive. If you do have access to a laptop, then great. You can tap us some questions. If you want to do a little bit of writing, how old-fashioned is that? But we've got a couple of things, some thinking spaces where I'm going to ask you just at least to think with me about some of the questions that are out there. And we'll try as well to take your questions at the end, because I know when I talked to Felicia in America, she expressed some doubt that this subject was of great urgency. So I'm going to try and talk to you a little bit about the whole piece this afternoon. And, you know, we're looking at young people and gambling in terms of, we're not trying to condemn it, but we're not trying to advertise it either. We're looking at great educational balance. So a little bit about me. How did I get to this place of gambling and gaming? Well, I have to tell you that 5 or 6 years ago, I hadn't even been to a casino. I hadn't been to a betting shop. Even my wife was the only person in our family ever to have bought a lottery ticket. So I was completely unaware of the whole piece of work in this area until one day, due to the joys of LinkedIn, I was introduced to a man who'd lost £500,000 in the casinos of London over the space of 2 years. And he had done this not by playing roulette, you know, to the James Bond type things, or blackjack late into the night. Literally, coin by coin, he had put his money into fruit machines. And he'd been there morning, noon and night until he ran through not only his own savings, but loans from the banks, 37 payday loans he raced through as well. And finally, as he would tell you, he stole from his own company. And having almost gone to prison, he decided that he would rather like to set up a gambling charity. And as Felicia has told you, my background in developing curriculum put him together with me, and together we created a whole series of workshops and resources for teachers around that subject. Over the last 5 years, I've actually trained teachers in casinos. Amazing. We've taken them there to show them what goes on. I've been to the betting shops to see what happens there. I've also worked with the gambling industry, which is both fascinating and frightening simultaneously. And if any of you have ever had any dealings, you will know that they make quite a lot of money. No, I'll say it again, they make a load of money. They really do. So we need to just educate our young people about whether they are interested in gambling, whether they think it's a sensible thing to do, because actually at the moment we are growing the next generation of gamblers. So what do we want to tell them about the issues? Okay, so let's go live with the PowerPoint. And let's just have a little look at what I hope to talk to you about very briefly in the next sort of 20 minutes or so. So you might be sitting there saying, well, hey, Adrian, what's the problem? I'd never heard about it before. So I want to share a little bit of kind of UK data with you. And I'm pretty convinced that this translates into a fairly global picture as well. But we'll have a look at, you know, how worried should we be? Is this just another kind of storm in a teacup? Why young people gamble? What are the motivations? What are the drivers for that? I've already mentioned James Bond. A lot of you, I'm sure, in lockdown will have raced through the complete box set of James Bond, and there's barely a film where he's not in a casino looking awfully glamorous. You know, is that where we're all going? Or do we all want to win the national lottery tomorrow and retire forever? What are the chances? A little bit about odds. I was by profession an English teacher, but I was forced to train as a maths teacher as well. And I love my probability. I love the way that the numbers crunch in gambling. Okay. We'll think about society and gambling. I think it's delightful that most of you are on mute, and some of you are hiding as well at the moment in terms of you're not on camera. But we're going to play a bit of confessional stuff this afternoon in terms of, are we all gamblers? It might turn out that we are, okay? And what does that mean? What can education offer? So for the last 5 years, you know, I've been working, as I say, with schools and young people, and even with parents about what's the message. And don't worry, I am not the new Puritan in town, come to say, thou shalt not. You know, we're all going to hell in a handcart. As we all know, education is exactly about that. It's about making young people aware of the choices. You know, what are the paths we can take and where will they end? I have some practical steps for you. I've got something that I'd like to give to you this afternoon as an activity that you can run with your young people if and when you get back to school, or you know, even online. There are things we can do together as a global community, as this conference shows. But let's have a look at some of the data. It's generally about a year behind the curve. So here we have some stuff from our own beloved UK Gambling Commission. They're the people who oversee and regulate everything here in the UK. And you'll see that 14% of 11 to 16-year-olds have gambled in the last week. And if you've got a little alarm bell ringing in your head already, you'll realise that that's illegal for starters in terms of what gambling looks like. And we'll just try and dig into what that sort of gambling looks like. 1.7% of 11 to 16-year-olds are defined as problem gamblers. Again, you know, what does a problem gambler exhibit? What are those behaviours? And again, 13% of 11 to 16-year-olds have played online gambling style games. Again, let's kind of drill down into this information. I'm not going to read out the infographic on the right-hand side. I will allow you to do that. Just to say that where we're looking at gambling to start off with is those blessed fruit machines that I mentioned earlier. You remember when you used to go to the seaside? You know, we all were taken by our parents, I'm sure, we know, with a bag of pennies, and we quite playfully put those pennies into the fruit machine. I've certainly taken my children to Brighton, where there are a good number of machines, and we can do that with impunity. But you will also know there are different categories of machines. And if you go to your local pub in the UK, there are certainly machines that are not meant for young people. But actually, you know what? They are there playing them. And actually, a lot of publicans don't actually watch what's going on in the background. They've got greater concerns around that. So there are issues around that. Also, just remember that gambling just defines some of that more casual stuff. Do you remember when you bet somebody that they wouldn't do something? Yeah, that still exists. But a lot of the time, there are also games that involve, you know, exchanges of money, aren't there? We have something in the UK called Toss the Coin. It used to be for pennies. The one that landed nearest the wall gathered all the other pennies. Well, inflation now says that's not a penny, but a pound. So I guess, you know, not a cent, but a dollar for Felicio. And you can do the equivalent wherever you are around the world into euros for Felicio in Brussels. So there's all sorts of stuff going on out there. And one of the things I'm not suggesting is that there was a posse of young people hammering to get into the casinos. Some of them are queuing outside the betting shop. But one thing I should say to you is that these little babies, these Pandora's boxes, are now allowing young people to gamble online. And that's quite interesting and also quite frightening in terms of kids who are smarter than their parents, who can get around their security, borrow their password, use their account. So we should be aware that online gaming is increasing year on year. Okay, so that's interesting. Problem gamblers? Well, we're growing problem gamblers. If we're starting them in 11 to 16 years old, that means they're probably spending more money than they can afford from their pocket money. They're probably gambling at inappropriate times. It means they've not been checked sufficiently by the gambling operators. So there are all sorts of things that should concern us as teachers and parents in terms of educating young people about what they should or shouldn't be doing. The most worrying thing perhaps for us, however, should also be that gaming, which is my other specialised subject, is now encroaching on gambling. And again, with lockdown, with increased access to gaming, young people are exploring more and more the stuff that is out there. And a lot of games now have gambling style products in them. If you've kept your eye on the news, you'll see there are things called loot boxes. And loot boxes are where you gamble on the contents of something in a virtual reality. So it might be a better skin, which could be a uniform or a weapon. It could be that you're playing FIFA and you're gambling on the virtual pack of cards. Some virtual reality games, you will go in and there'll be a virtual roulette wheel or a virtual gambling tool of some other kind, you know, like a fruit machine. So there are all sorts of creeping behaviours. And again, we should be worried in this space. There's a lot of data out there, but let's not dwell too much on it. Let's have a little think about what we as educators want to say about it. So first of all, I think we're looking to educate in the 14 to 25-year-old space. I think that's appropriate. And even though my data says 11 upwards, I think we need to concentrate our efforts on this age group. Here in the UK, we're looking in schools at 4 particular areas to have this conversation. And again, I offer this to you today, but you could put it under what we call personal, social, health, economic education. Every school in the UK runs these sessions. They all run them differently. Some have a day or 2 days devoted to this, but certainly understanding risk and risky behaviours, gaming, gambling, all of those other online behaviours fit into personal, social health and economic education. Secondly, we're also pushing back here in the UK on well-being. Again, if you're gaming or gambling too much, I'll show you a little bit later, but there's a strong suspicion that your mental and physical health will deteriorate if you do either of those too much, if you become addicted to those things. Number 3, you can teach gaming and gambling, particularly gambling, through mathematics. We have a brilliant lottery here in the UK, the one that I've never played. It used to be that it was a 1 in 14 million chance of winning the big prize from the 49 balls that dropped each week. And then we decided to add 10 more, a stroke of genius. What did that do to the odds, everybody online? Okay, I can hear you doing the calculations. There are 6 balls. There are 59 of them. They all come down, but the odds stay the same. Yes, you're right. The answer is 1 in 45 million. I can see Felicia's got the right answer. Well done, Felicia. Congratulations. In other words, it probably won't be you to steal the advertising campaign. The odds are stacked massively against you. And we need to explain to young people that actually the chances of winning are not good. Finally, for the PAGS presentation, and for those of you who are interested, obviously science, looking at cognitive functions, reactions and memory, we need to educate young people around whether they are actually going to be more problematic in this space. And I'm doing some really interesting work at the moment with my cognition on whether we can identify problematic gambling signs earlier. So there's a lot of interest in here and a lot that we can teach in the curriculum. So let's very briefly just have a little think, and you might want to write down, it says in pairs, but I'm guessing that the rule of breakout rooms and all the rest of it we're going to ignore today. But what is a definition of gambling? What is a definition of gambling? And this is something you can do with your young people, this particular slide, and we'll share this with you. But a definition of gambling actually is a piece of financial speculation based on some unreliable probability with the expectation that you won't win. I've been working on that for 5 years. And we'll save that, won't we, Felicia? And we'll record it, which means I don't have to repeat it and get it slightly different, okay? But the essential thing is we're speculating, aren't we? And like my friend, we're speculating probably sometimes what we can't afford. And actually the returns over a space of time generally will leave us in debt. Apart from professional poker players, most of us are going to lose and lose and lose again. So it's quite interesting. The other quite interesting thing, and I won't dwell too long on this, is that, you know, betting or playing, a lot of us don't like to be defined as gamblers. And we'll do my little honesty test in a moment. But we only play the lottery, don't we? It's just playing, yeah? Or I'm just having a bet, I'm not gambling, okay? And yet, you know, the definition of just given of gambling would seem to cover us all, okay? So here we go, something for 10. You don't have to hold your hands up, but when I do this with teachers, it is hilarious because we're all being very serious. And then I say, okay, put up your hand if you play the national lottery. And nearly everybody, yeah, thanks Felicia. I can't see most of you today, but most people are actually putting their hands up for the national lottery. Scratch cards. Yeah, no, I love scratch cards. You stand behind people in the kiosk and they do what I call the countdown approach. They say 2 from the top, 3 from the middle row, and then as if there's science in it, they say, oh, and 1 from over there. So they've got a real kind of belief in this system. If you're like me, have you been to the casino? No, I'm probably, yeah. Oh, Felicia and Felicia, yeah. Casino goers, all, that's great. Horse racing. We went. We actually won first time. After that, we lost and lost and we lost again. I'm guessing that a lot of us are, you know, people who've been in education for a while. Anyone do online sports betting? No, we'll leave that to the bright young things, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Bingo. Yeah, okay, good, bingo. I once went for investigative purposes only, and it's really quite interesting. And for other, well, there are lots of things you could tell me about, like the greyhounds, if you wanted to, you know, or you might play poker. Some of you look like poker players. So we don't know, do we? What I can tell you is this, that young people love lottery and scratch cards because in the UK, you can be 16 and you can start playing. Fruit machines, yeah, they're up there. Friendly bets, yeah, they're up there. Betting shops and casinos, only if you think you look 18 and you can produce some false ID. But the biggest thing at the moment, especially for young men in a kind of 16 to 25 age group, is online sports betting. And you now have the perfect storm, coronavirus apart. You have a pub, you have a gathering space. You have a big screen TV showing football almost all day. And then you have the fact that you've got an app that you can download on your phone and you can gamble all day on football. And we know that the more alcohol you consume, the more likely you are to engage in these risky behaviours. So that is the greatest kind of worry in this present space. Again, we can't do everything this afternoon, but I would encourage you to take my new morality slide, because if we are a world of gamblers, if frankly we are all saying, I put my hand up to something, or even I once went to the church bring and buy, to the church tombola and put my hand in and pulled out a prize, are we being hypocritical if we say, don't do this, don't do that? So my question is rhetorical, but what do we say to young people? It's just a bit of fun. Don't do it. As a Yorkshireman, I don't like to part with my money. That would be my kind of, you know, don't put chief executives into a place where they have a salary of £250 million, because I think I know where the money's going. So there are some questions. This is an interesting slide. Again, I've got more detail But the risks are quite clearly financial. One young man here in the UK a couple of years ago got his father's credit card, and before he had been caught, he'd spent £30,000 on gambling. Here we are, all in lockdown. So time, we don't even measure time anymore. You know, all I know is it's May, I think. Yeah. So time, we can stay up late, we can get up late. It doesn't really matter. But young people will stay up after their parents. They will have their devices and they will be up through the night. You know, so it's really dangerous. And they also, you know, sort of won't be discovered as well. They will be quite secretive. Relationships, they can break down upon discovery of gambling habits. You know, it tends to be, it all comes out, it all explodes. It's a secret addiction. Academic progress, we're all educators. If you're awake all night gambling, you're probably going to be asleep all day and either not present in school or not awake in school. Grades dip. Other things, health. I talked about mental health. There are a lot of issues around this. Again, we're growing problem gamblers of the future, but the burden of debt, the guilt of knowing what you're doing, simply the actual act of being on a screen for so long, we know is dangerous, both for your mental well-being and also your carpal tissue muscles. We were not meant to be doing that with gaming. We were not meant to be hunched over laptops all night as well. And finally, you know, I've worked with the police on various matters. There's crime in there as well to pay for the gambling. And again, you know, it could be linked to drugs, it could be linked to robbery, it could be linked to mugging to pay for these behaviours. Okay. I'm going to click through a few slides, but one thing that we would urge is that if you have any problems, that you do get in touch, because we have addiction and pathways to help, not just for adults, but now for the National Health Service as well, to look at the problems of addictive behaviours, both gaming and gambling here in the UK. And I also have global contacts as well if you do have concerns about young people. The solutions are not always easy, what can education offer? The solutions are that we look at a personal approach, that we don't stigmatise people for actually gambling, but we begin to explore their reasons for doing this. We look at the social aspect of gambling. Sometimes it can seem like quite a friendly space to be in. If you go racing, horse racing, it's a big group of people. If it's like you're in a pub, it can be the same, but a lot of gamblers are really isolated. They're isolated by the way they gamble, more of them online. They're also isolated by the secrets that they have. Even though you might be in a group where everybody gambles, you might be the only one who's experiencing loss and distress. Okay. I'm looking at my clock, so I'm going to click through my next slide just to say, here is my kind of educational gift to you today in terms of something that I always urge my teachers to do in my workshop. And I say, run this with your young people, but run a social media campaign. Have a think about the message you might want to share in your school, your college, your university. And again, we'll share these sessions with you. My kind of concluding remarks are, you know, run awareness sessions. And please do come back to me. I can help you with that. Don't say no to gambling. Triangulate. Don't think that teachers and students are the only people in the conversation. Get parents involved. Triangulation is good. Be honest about your own behaviours. You know, if you have ever lost a lot of money or you've been worried, it's good to share. It's good to be human. Please don't be a teacher about it, because we know that teachers never have girlfriends or boyfriends. They don't drink. They're absolute saints, and certainly they don't gamble. We can be honest in this space if we want to be, and know where to get help. My business at Seventh Wave Training is to deliver training, and we're putting this online at the moment. We've just launched our education arm yesterday, so please have a look at the website, seventhwavetraining.co.uk/news, We've got a team of 7 people here in the UK now to deliver our gaming and gambling training, but we're also going to put it online around the globe. At which point I'm going to stop talking because I'm aware there might be a chat room coming up. Would that be right, Felicia and Felicia?